can, the book of Revelation, we have to start right at Genesis. So if we look at the Tower of Babel, you need to. You talked about the Tower of Babel. And how they sought. Did everyone get it? Thank you. So we talked about the Tower of Babel and how they sought to make a one-world government. So in the Tower of Babel, they were building a huge kingdom, promoting themselves. We're going to do everything that we can do to show that we are gods. And God came down and confused their language because we are susceptible as humans to following a single person. And that single person can lead us into a ditch. And there's something in us that will follow that person. Especially men. I'm just saying this. I taught high school. The girls seem to have more independent thought. The guys were more susceptible to one person saying, hey, let's all go do this. And all the guys go, okay. And so with Nimrod as the leader, people were following him. Now, the reason we are susceptible is because God has put in us a need to worship someone. Obviously, the person we're supposed to worship is God. But if we don't see God, we'll worship somebody else. That's just in us, naturally. So God confused their language so that they would all go to where he had told them to go. Last week we read how God had told them to spread out all over the earth, but they didn't. They stayed as one big group. God knew if they spoke different languages, they would spread out. Because I don't speak your language, I'm going to be mad at you, I'm going to go somewhere else. So if he didn't, it was a simple thing. I'll just give them all different languages. They'll find the people who talk like them, and then they will go in a different direction. So they've spread out, but then he chose one family, Abraham and his seed, to give them the gospel so that they would spread it and be a blessing to everybody else. We read where it said God's goal is that if I spread them out separately, they'll seek after the Lord. That's his goal, that people will get together and seek after the Lord. They'll look at their conditions and say, well, we sure do need something. Something's not right. And hopefully, they would spread out and seek after the Lord. But God doesn't make us do anything. He doesn't make us do it. So he creates the conditions where things are not going so well so that we'll look for help. God's hope is that we'll look for help to him. If we're smart, we will. I don't know why we think that man knows more than him, but we do. So a lot of times we turn to this person or that person instead of to God. Because we just think, well, Oprah really knows. And I'm not putting down Oprah. Oprah's wonderful. But there are people who would rather read Oprah's book than the Bible. That's how we are. So, Abraham's seed, through which God is giving the gospel, he's paying them special attention. I'm going to pay special attention to you. Be careful if God pays special attention to you. Because that means more is required of you. So he's paying special attention to this group. I'm going to do miracles with this group. I'm going to do everything to show that I am God. The problem with that is now you're responsible. You've seen God do miracles. So when you reject God, the punishment is greater than someone who really hasn't seen God. Does that make sense? So it's great that God's doing miracles in their midst, parting the Red Sea, doing all this stuff. That's excellent. Except once they reject him, the judgment's going to be even worse. right? So, they were in Egypt for a while. We read last week how that was their fault that they were in Egypt. God had told them they were to stay, but they didn't. He sent them to Egypt in order to feed them for 7 years. They were supposed to go back, and they didn't. They decided to stay in Egypt instead of staying where God had told them to stay. And then they were captured. They were there for 400 years. Finally, God leads them out. And in Joshua, we get this warning. Okay, so that's what we're going to start reading. Joshua chapter 23, verse 14 through 16.
Behold, this day I'm going the way of all the earth. And you know in all
that means I'm going to die. Joshua's saying, I'm going to go the way of all the earth. You know, everything lives and dies. Trees live, they die. Flowers live, they die. I'm going to do what everything, the natural cycle. Today I'm going the way of all the earth. Go ahead.
And you know in all your hearts and in all your souls that not one thing is failed of all the good things which the Lord your God has spoken concerning you. All have come to pass for you. Not one word of them is failed.
So he's bragging. God has done everything he said he would do. You know that not one thing that he promised you hasn't happened. So you have no excuse. God said he would deliver you from this group and that group, and from Pharaoh, all this. You know that not one thing that God hasn't promised is not going to pass. However, here's one thing that God did also promise. If you don't listen to me, there'll be consequences. So you know if the good stuff happened, the bad stuff's going to happen too. As Christians, we don't like to listen to the whole Bible. So we try to find all the blessing verses.
Right.
They don't publish a book of the curse verses. They're by daily promises. And they're always good. But God also promised if you don't listen to him, he'd spank that bottom.
Yeah, some of that.
Right. That way. That is my translation. But do you understand? And many of your parents, you promise, yes, if you're good, you'll have that birthday party. But if you're bad, that's not going to happen, right? God has done the same thing. So Joshua is telling us, God has said everything he was going to do, and he did it. However, go ahead. Therefore
it shall come to pass that as all the good things have come upon you, which the Lord your God promised you, so the Lord will bring upon you all harmful things, until he has destroyed you from this good land which the Lord your God has given you. When you have transgressed the covenant of the Lord your God, which he commanded you, and have gone and served other gods, and bowed down to them, the anger of the Lord will burn against you, and you shall perish quickly from the good land which he has given you.
So he's very specific. When you start worshiping other gods, because God knows what we're going to do. So he warns us in advance. It's very cool of him to do that. Oh, I'm in your way. I'm sorry. Leave it. Okay, thank you. Let me know. So, he says, when you go after other gods, and God will warn us. God will warn us. We can listen or not. But he knows what we're going to do. When you bow down to them, then the anger of the Lord is going to burn against you, and you shall perish quickly from the good land which is given you. So for years, the Jews are in the promised land, and God sent warning after warning after warning. You're going to mess up. You're going to get in trouble. Here in Jeremiah, he gives his final warning. Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 8 through 12.
Therefore, thus says the Lord of hosts, that you have not heard my words. Behold, I will send and take all the families of the earth, says the Lord that lives. The book.
Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon.
The king of Babylon, my servant, and will bring them against Jerusalem, against its inhabitants, and against this nation all around, and will utterly destroy them and make them an astonishment, a precept and perpetual desolation.
Okay. You can't keep talking. No, I know, I don't care.
Shall be a desolation and an astonishment. And these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. And it shall come to pass when 70 years are accomplished that I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, saith the Lord.
So let's examine that. Because you have not heard my words, I will send to take all the families of the north and Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, who is my servant. Nebuchadnezzar is my servant. He's not my enemy. He's actually my servant. God's trying to say that anybody who comes into power, they're my servant. They may not know they're serving me, but I put that person in power. Sometimes for good, sometimes to bring judgment. But there's nobody in power anywhere that God hasn't allowed. But we don't know how he's using them. Pharaoh, God raised him up just so we all know the story. There's not anyone on earth who doesn't know the story of Moses crossing the Red Sea and how Pharaoh got that butt beat. Everybody knows that. Pharaoh didn't listen to God, and so this is what happened to him as a warning to every nation. So even though Pharaoh was, I don't listen to God, God said, I know you're not going to listen to me, and I'm going to punish you for it. Just to show everybody the peril of not listening to me. So he says, Nebuchadnezzar's my servant. I'm going to bring Nebuchadnezzar and all the families of the north. These are the Persians, all the nations that live north of Israel. The Assyrians, etc. I'm going to bring them all against you and take you out of the land, because I've sent you warnings for 300 or 400 years to stop sinning, and you have not listened to me. And this whole land will be desolation and an astonishment. It shall come to pass when 7 years are accomplished that I will punish the king of Babylon. Then I will punish the king of Babylon. So he's my servant now. But he's going to mess up, and I'm going to punish him.
Yeah.
So there's going to be 70 years. And sure enough, yes, sir. Thank you. Okay. And sure enough, I didn't make enough of you.
Oh, here's one.
No, we're okay. We're right now. And so the king of Babylon went and captured Israel. But first, he showed up and he got just the top people of the country, the royal family. So when Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians came, all they did was take first just the royal family. They later came back and took the rest of Israel and destroyed the temple. But first he just takes the royal family. Now, is it a coincidence that it's the Babylonians? Again, we started with the Tower of Babel, and Babel is where Babylon was established. In Babylon, they've always wanted to conquer the world. Started with Nimrod. So the first major empire that ever existed was the Babylonian Empire, where they wanted to conquer the world. So Nebuchadnezzar is taking people from every country. I'm going to take all your best people, bring them to Babylon, and we're going to train them to think like Babylonians. We're going to teach them our culture, we're going to teach them our language, our religion, and this is how we will slowly take over the world. We're all going to be thinking the same thing, and feeling the same thing, and worshiping the same way. In the book of Revelations, the Antichrist, when he comes, whenever he comes, some people trying to act like this might happen 10, 15 years from now. It could be 500 years from now. But whenever the Antichrist comes, he's going to do the same thing. We have to be able to recognize him, because the Bible says he's going to fool Christians. So there's something about what is offered. One religion, one language, that we're all going to go, not we, we're smart, we're studying. Oh, that sounds good. I should be a part of that. That's the solution to world peace. That's the solution. Now, God wants to solve world peace. I'm not saying he doesn't. He wants to solve world hunger. But man's going to come up with a way to do it. And God's going to have a way to do it. And the way that man comes up to do it will be enticing. That will make sense. Well, that's the way to do it. If we only did it that way, then that would solve everything. And a lot of Christians are going to be fooled and follow this person of peace who's going to present himself like the Messiah. I've got the answer. If we just do it, if we all just join together and did it this way. Now again, God doesn't want us to join together. He's not against people joining together, but he has a way to do it. And we're going to be susceptible, unfortunately, to this other person. A lot of people, the Bible says, will be fooled. You can guarantee it, just like everything else in the Bible has come true, that's going to come true. So we're studying the book of Revelation so we won't be fooled. But we've got to see where it started. So in Babylon, they captured people from every nation. They brought them there and they began to teach them their language, including Daniel. So let's go to Daniel. And God had warned them. Daniel chapter 1, verse verse 1 and then verse 3 and 4.
In the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. Then the king instructed Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, to bring some of the children of Israel, and some of the king's descendants, and some of the nobles, young men in whom there was no limit, but good-looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge, and quick to understand, who had ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and literature of the Chaldeans.
Right, the Chaldeans were the Babylonians. So we want to find all your best, your brightest people. We're going to teach them our language, our literature. We're going to teach people from all over the world, and we'll all be thinking the same way, and then we'll have peace and harmony. It sounds good, and it is good. The problem is it's their way of doing it. Daniel kept standing against it. You know the story of Daniel in the lion's den, and Daniel, the 3 Hebrew children in the fiery furnace.
Yeah.
You've heard those stories, but they're not there so that we go, ooh, weren't they brave? The point of what's going on in Daniel is this is the Antichrist's first attempt to create a world government, and Daniel stood against it. Daniel was able to recognize, even if it means my life, I'm not going to do it the way they say to do it. And that's what the Antichrist will offer. If you do it my way, everything will be great. If you don't do it my way, Christians, you're going to have a problem. And many Christians will think, well, we might as well go ahead and do it that way. That makes sense. And a lot of Christians will not be able to recognize that that's a lie, what he's saying, what he's offering. So Daniel kept fighting, right? Then the king was impressed. Nebuchadnezzar was impressed with Daniel, that he kept fighting and would stand up for what was right. So he comes to him, and the king has a dream. So let's read Daniel chapter 2, verse 2, 4 through 5.
Then the king gave a command to all the magicians, the astrologers, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans to tell the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king.
So why did God give the dream to Daniel? Why did he give it to Nebuchadnezzar? You want the message out, so he finds the most important person, gives them their dream. That's why he said Nebuchadnezzar was my servant. I was giving him dreams. Because at this point, Nebuchadnezzar controls the world. Right? At this point, the Babylonians are the biggest empire. Let me give you this dream because this dream will be broadcast, and I want people to know what's going to happen in the future. So the king has a dream. He wants to know the meaning of this dream. God gave him this dream. But the king is intelligent. He says, if I tell you the dream, then you're going to make up something. And I want the real interpretation of it. So you tell me what I dreamed. You can tell me what I dreamed, then I know that God is speaking through you and that what your interpretation is going to be correct. Oh, okay. Now this is how the gifts of the Spirit work in the church. God wants to, I often try to get people not to tell me their business or what's going on with somebody, because if God tells me supernaturally, then when I say to them, oh, you know what, maybe you should handle this way or do this way, they're more likely to believe because they go, well, God told them what was going on, so now I can believe the solution. If someone tells you too much stuff, we're naturally, with our minds, going to come up with a solution.
Absolutely.
Because we want to help. Well, here's what you should do. But how do I know if what you tell me is really from God? It may just be from you, and you're trying to help. You're not trying to hurt. So I say, well, I don't want to really hear it. Don't tell me. If God tells me about it, that would be a new thing for Christians to say, don't tell me.
Come on, you know.
As opposed to, but anyway, if God wants me to know, he will tell me. And then he'll also give you the solution for it. If God doesn't tell me, I don't need to know about it. That'd be a new, okay, so anyway, that's what Nebuchadnezzar is saying. If you can tell me the dream, then we're good. Then I'll believe the solution. So verse 4.
Then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic. O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will give the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, My decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream to me in its interpretation, you shall be cut in pieces, and your house shall be made an ash heap.
So that was deep. That's deep. If you can't tell me what I dreamed, I'm going to kill you. So they were naturally nervous. Yeah, okay, we're about to be killed. So they went to Daniel. Hey Daniel, even though we tried to kill you before and we're mad at you and all that stuff, can you help out? Now people will come to Christians if you act Christianly. If a whole fight breaks out and you're the one that holds your peace and you're sweet about it and you don't get involved, later they'll come to you. You know what? You kept your head. I want advice from you. If you get in a car accident and you at work tell people, you know, I was in a car accident, but God's going to work it out. I know I'm not supposed to. Okay, this woman ran into me. And if you act like everybody else, then you're just like everybody else. But if people are talking about you and you go, that's okay, they can talk about me. I'm just going to pray for them. That would be a new way to respond. Then people will come to you later and ask for help because clearly there's something different about you. You got sick and you just praised the Lord. Your car broke down and you just praised the Lord. People were talking about you, you just praised the Lord. There's something different about you. So they knew there was something different about Daniel because that's how he responded. He didn't even seek revenge once he was thrown in the lion's den and all that. He was just good with it all. So they came to him now. The people who would try to destroy him, they came to him. And they asked him, and God gave him the dream and interpretation of the dream. So let's read his interpretation of the dream.
People were watching, and behold, a great image. This great image whose splendor was excellent stood before you, and its form was awesome. This image head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. Okay, so he sees a person. They're calling it an image, but there's a person, like a giant statue, standing in front of him. Its head is gold. Its arms and chest are silver. Its belly and thighs are, are bronze. Its legs and toes are iron. And its toes actually are of clay. Iron and clay mixed together. So he's like, what does that mean? Now he tells him the second part of the dream. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image of its feet of iron and clay, and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together, and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found, and the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. So some stone suddenly was cut without hands, meaning man had nothing to do with it. Do you remember when God told Moses to build the altar? He said, find a stone that has not been cut with human hands. Don't chisel it out. Because we want to take credit for too much stuff. So he wanted a stone that God had created, not that man had anything to do with. Because God wants all the glory, God is a glory hog. He wants all the glory. He gets frustrated when we take too much credit for anything. In the church, we like to do that. After a program, we make sure that we congratulate all the people who
that part.
And that's okay, but the bad part is people who are getting upset when their name wasn't mentioned.
That part.
I understand it's human nature to say, thank you so much for your help. That's not evil. The evil part is, you didn't say my name, now I'm not helping no more. Because I did all this work, and nobody praised me. The only way you were able to do that was because God gave you the energy to do it. God needs to get all the glory. So he will make sure you can do it the next time. I don't know why I'm just so sick all the time. Well, because you wanted too much of the glory. So now, watch, the show will go on without you. Aren't you amazed? Because it's me, I'm making the show work. I'll use somebody else. He wants all the glory. And so God said, I want you to find it. So there's a stone. He told Moses, find a stone that you have not touched. That's the altar. So everybody will be clear that I'm the one who deserves all the praise. And in the dream, Nebuchadnezzar sees a stone that's not cut with human hand. And that stone comes and crushes this huge statue. Starting with the feet and the toes, and then the whole thing falls down. And then that stone fills the whole earth. So Daniel then says, here's the interpretation. So now they're like, wow, okay, you're truly of God because you knew stuff you should not have known. So please tell me the interpretation. Whatever interpretation you come up with, I'm going to believe. Okay, so Daniel chapter 2, verse 2, go ahead.
You, O king, are a king of kings. For the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory.
So God, again, the idea of having one earth that all is worshiping together, that's the correct idea. The idea of having one earth that is worshiping Nebuchadnezzar, that's the wrong idea. So he's saying, Nebuchadnezzar, God put you in charge. That desire you have for us all to be one and speak one language and all that, that's correct. So that's why he's saying, you're my servant, I put you in charge. So God will put you in charge of something, but what you do with it is up to you, unfortunately. It's up to us.
Right.
Tell you for what you
So you can either use it for good or for evil. Right? So God will put people in place, give them power, give them authority, give them charisma. People, oh, I love that person. God gave that person that charisma. They either say, no, it's all about the Lord, it's all about Jesus, and it's not about me. Or they go, yes, aren't I wonderful? I've got these great plans. Listen to what I said. We need to sneak over there and do that. People go, yes. So again, Nebuchadnezzar, he said, God gave you this kingdom and this great power. That thought, we should all be united. Yes. However, it's not going to work out. So go on. You are said.
You are this head of gold. But after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours, then another, a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks to pieces and shatters everything. And like iron that crushes, that kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others.
Okay. Now, so your kingdom, you're that head of gold, the Babylonian kingdom. You're the head of gold. There's going to be a kingdom. Remember, there was silver. The kingdom that came after the Babylonians for the Media-Persian Empire. That's why it has two arms. The Media-Persian Empire. The Persians came after. Media-Persian Empire is located in modern-day Iran. The Babylonian Empire is located in modern-day Iraq. So if you were to look at a map, well, where's Babylon, where's Persia? Iraq and Iran. So they started battling 3,000 years ago. It has not stopped. Not stopped. They've been enemies for thousands and thousands of years. And world history will still hang on that region of the world. In the book of Revelation, when Christ comes back for the second time, whenever that is, the conflict will start in that same region. So he says, you're the king of Babylon. Just know that the Persians are coming and they're going to fight you and take over from you. But that kingdom has two arms, the Medes and the Persians. After that, that third empire, that belly of brass and thighs of brass, he's saying, that is the Greek Empire. Do you remember who was the head of the Greek, when the Greeks began to fight and take over the world? Who's that great person? Alexander the Great, right? He was the next. God had already predicted 100 years before he did that Alexander the Great would come, and that became the next great empire. He says, and then finally you got those legs of iron. That empire were the Romans. The Romans came after that, and they were stronger than all the rest. Now, it's the 10 toes of iron mixed with clay that people who study the Bible have missed it on, not all of them, but just the ones who go on television and sell books about the end of the world. They miss it on what that means, the toes of iron and clay. And so we're going to study from the Bible, because they try to They teach the Bible from today back instead of from then forward. When Daniel is interpreting the dreams, he's interpreting based on what he knows and what has happened, and what he's read. And he's looking forward in time. We are looking backwards. We've already seen it. And people are judging from today and looking around and go, what can those 10 toes mean? And they're looking at what they see today. And they're interpreting based on, here's how I see the world today. This must be what Daniel meant. But the stuff that has happened today hadn't happened yet. God wouldn't use stuff from 2,000 years away in order to teach Daniel what was going to happen. He's talking about stuff that Daniel is familiar with. So keep going, whoever was reading.
Whereas you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter clay and partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. Yet the strength of the iron shall be in it, just as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay.
So somehow in the Roman Empire there's also going to be clay mixed in. And the kingdom will be divided. They'll be working together but not working together. The clay and the iron will be working together but not really working together. Trying to work together. So they're going to be together on the same toe. Sometimes my big toe finds my other toes and tries to cut them, but that's another whole story. If I let my nails get too big.
That part.
That's my business. I'm not bringing it up. But they're going to be trying to work together. The toes are not going to be working together. But they're going to be stuck on the same foot. Right? Sometimes that bunion you just want to cooperate. But so the toes of iron and clay, they're working together, yet they're still going to be divided. Okay, go on.
And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile.
Right? The iron part will be strong, the clay part will be fragile, not as strong. Go on.
As you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron is not mixed with clay.
He's talking about intermarriage. They're going to marry, right? Whoever is the iron, which we know is the Romans, going to mix with the clay, to figure out who the clay is. There will be intermarriage, but it's not going to really work out. Go on.
And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed.
So during the days of those kings, of the 10-toed kings, during those 10-toed days, that's when God's going to set up a kingdom which will not be destroyed. Go on.
And the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever.
So all these kingdoms, once this kingdom, this everlasting kingdom shows up, this rock, it's going to destroy all those kingdoms. They're all going to be rendered useless, and that kingdom will stand forever. That's established.
So,
Yes.
you said the intermarriage would be just a political alliance?
Political alliance. Also, literally, whoever the Romans and these other people, then people will marry. There'll be politically aligned, different, but also literal marriages. Because it says the seed of man will mix together, not just politically, but there'll literally children come out of this marriage between the Roman and these other people. So those are the heads, because I take too long. Now, in Jeremiah, he talks about Israel. Jeremiah was warning Israel before they ever came and were captured by the Babylonians. Stop messing up, you Babylonians, you Israelites, or you're going to be in bondage for 70 years. And it was exactly 70 years that they were in bondage. He's warning them. They did not think it was going to happen. We're God's chosen people. Now, God's not going to forsake us. Look at all the miracles He did for us. He brought us out of Egypt. He killed Goliath. He did this, He did that. They're not thinking God's going to do anything. God's not going to do it. And He's trying to explain, yes, He will. Even though God made this promise to you and said, you're my chosen people, He'll use you for a different purpose than originally if you're not cooperating with Him. And so He begins to explain that concept. Because God's not going to go back in His Word. You are my chosen people. But I chose you for one thing. I might repurpose you and choose you for something else. You're still chosen. You're still chosen. But for the original purpose, I'm going to choose you for a different purpose and in a different way. And that's what was confusing them. So they thought we could just do whatever we want. Some kids think that. Some people think that. Well, I can do, you know, my daddy owns this place, or, you know what I mean? And you just think, I can just mess around. It's like, no, you can't be disinherited. You're still my son, but you're not going to have any money. Yes, sir.
Yes, up in, back up in the big, talk about the straight image good before you. I know you do a lot of research.
Yes.
Structure. Yeah, well, some kind of stuff when you create this image.
It was just simply a dream that he had. In a dream, he saw like a giant statue. Again, a head of gold, which represents the Babylonians. Arms of silver, which represented the Persian Empire, Medo-Persian Empire. The belly and the thighs were of brass, which represented the Greeks. And then he said the next kingdom, the next world kingdom is going to be the Romans who were coming. That represents the legs of iron.
So nobody put this together.
No, he had a dream. Like you have dreams. And you're eating pizza. I'm just making that up. But no one has actually come to your house late at night and eat your pizza. It just shows up in your dreams. Actually, that's in my dream. And lots of donuts.
Lots of
floating
donuts.
in a pool with a donut raft around me. Just eating on
All the
it.
donut holes.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Won't he do it?
Yes. Okay, anyway, but enough about me. Okay, so now we're in Jeremiah, where Jeremiah is warning Israel, even though God chose you to keep messing up, he's going to come after you. Jeremiah chapter 18, verse 2, then 4 through 6.
Arise and go down to the potter's house, and there I will cause you to hear my words.
So that he goes and looks and he sees the potter making a vessel. Go ahead.
Right. And the vessel that he made of clay was marred in the was marred in the hand of the potter. So he made it again into another vessel, as it seemed good to the potter to make. Then the word of the Lord came to me, saying, O house of Israel, can I not do with you as this potter? Says the Lord. Look, as the clay is in the potter's hand, so are you in my hand, O house of Israel.
Yes, so he's saying, I went to the potter's house, and the potter's shaping like God shapes our lives. He's the potter. He's shaping our lives. The people you're running into, the people you're meeting, that's God shaping us. They're not coincidence. Oh, I just happened to run into that person. No, you didn't. God made sure that that meeting happened. So I saw the Lord shaping a vessel, but then it became marred in the potter's hands. Now, here's where we want to be clear that God doesn't change his mind about us. We change. So he says, okay, then I'll use you differently. When we hear about the clay and wax, God often talks about a heart of clay or a heart of stone or a heart of wax. When the sun of his grace shines down and you got a lump of clay and you got a lump of wax, the clay gets hard, the wax melts. The sun is not liking the clay more than the wax. The sun's just doing what it do. God just does what I'm going to shine my grace, and how you respond to what I do in your life, that depends upon you. Are you clay or are you wax? Do you melt in my, or do you harden? That quality is up to us. God does one thing. God comes to Pharaoh and says, let my people go. Pharaoh can say, yes, I'm going to do that. Or, no, I'm not going to do that. And then calamity comes on him. But the decision is Pharaoh's. But God sends his word into our lives. And then how we respond is up to us. We're either thrown in prison and we praise God, well, Lord, I know you're going to work it out. Or we get in prison and we try to cut people. I'm getting out of here. That's up to us. So, but or God blesses us. You're on your deathbed, and Lord, if you just heal me, I'm going to get up and do right. So he heals you, and you get up and you do the very same thing that got you in the first place, right? I'm going to have a big party, and cook a bunch of ribs, and a bunch of fat chicken, and to celebrate, and that's the very thing. And again, black people who are funny to me, we're the people who will, at the funeral, cook the very food that killed the person.
Dude, that part.
Celebrate. Right. So that's our choice. We can either get up from that deathbed and say, I'm gonna change. I'm gonna exercise every morning. Don't we think that while we're on the deathbed? I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna run a couple blocks every day, and I'm gonna exercise, and I'm gonna eat fruit and vegetables. That's our choice, how we respond to God. God bless me. Or we say, ooh, well, now I'm gonna do it again. That's up to us. That's up to us. So God is shining on Israel, and when the vessel became marred, God didn't mar it. That's Israel constantly rejecting God's grace. He's constantly saving them. He's constantly blessing them. He's constantly, and they keep just going back and serving other gods and worshiping these people and that people. The thing that got Israel in trouble in the first place and why they went into bondage, because they began to worship the gods of Egypt. Now they've been in Egypt for 400 years, came out of Egypt, and still wanted to go back.
Yeah.
And that's, we'll do that. We get rescued from a situation, something in us wants to go back into it. And that's everything that messed us up. So if you get that speeding ticket, do we think, let me slow down from now on? Or do we think, let me keep my eye out for the police so I can keep speeding? This time I'm going to make sure I'm looking for them. Do we change, or do we go back to that same? And then when we get in a car accident, oh, Lord, help. God's like, no, I tried to help you several times. That speeding ticket was me. When that policeman came by, when your mama said slow down, all that was me. And you rejected each of those things. And so now, yeah, your car's all messed up, and I'm not getting you a new car. I tried to rescue your car several times, but you wouldn't listen, right? And so God's like, God's not no boo-boo the fool. I'm not, no, you can pray all you want for a new car, but you're going to have to suffer the consequences of not listening. So that's how the vessel becomes marred.
Get on the bus.
Not that God mars it, the vessel decides, no, I'm not going to cooperate. So when he looked, the vessel was marked. So God says, well, I'm going to make you into a different vessel. He doesn't destroy the vessel. I'm just going to use you differently. I was going to use you in one way to show people, here's what happens when you cooperate with me. Here are all the blessings in your life. But instead, I'm going to use you this way. Here's what happens when you don't cooperate with me. Here are all the curses and stuff that comes into your life. So either way, I'm going to get the glory. That's what God says. People either look at you, either become a cautionary tale, oh, don't do what they did. Or, oh, I want to do what they did. Look, that person is serving God, and look how they're blessed. So God's going to use us either way. So when the person went to the potter's house, he saw God say, okay, I'm just going to make you into another vessel. He didn't destroy the clay and make it disappear. I'll just make you into a different vessel and use you in a different way. So that's what Jeremiah tried to explain to Israel. Stop taking God's blessings for granted. Don't take it, because God has no problem repurposing you. And so that was the vision, and yet they still kept going after other gods. So, Paul comments on that in Romans, in the book of Romans, chapter 9, verse 21 to 25.
Does not the potter have power over the clay from the same lump to make one vessel for honor and another for dishonor?
Okay, so let's just say honor and dishonor. That's not a great translation. Honor and lesser honor. So you can have a vase that you're using for flour, to put flowers in, or take that same vase and use it to poop in. Because that's what they would do. They didn't have toilets and running water. So they would have a poop pot. So that vase is still getting use. But I'm using it, and it's decoration in my house, and I put flowers and whatever things in it, or I put poop in it.
Oh, it's a potty.
But I'm still using it. That's what we mean by honor or lesser honor. So I'm still going to use this vessel. God didn't have a problem. I'm using it. But where you were going to be used for this purpose, I'm just using it for this purpose now. And that's what he's warning Israel. You're the clay that God's trying to mold in a certain way, but if you don't keep cooperating, he will take this clay and use you differently. He'll mold you into a different purpose. So go on to the next.
What if God wanted to show his wrath and to make his power known? Endure with much long suffering, the vessels of wrath prepared for destruction.
What if God wanted to show his wrath and to make his power known? endured with much long suffering the vessels of wrath, who are now prepared for destruction. So God now wants to show. I was a teacher, and when I went to my teacher training, they said, you need to let your students know right away that there will be consequences for not paying attention. Because students, especially high school students, like to see if they can run the class. If they find a teacher they can run, then they're very happy. So you need to let them know they cannot run you. So first day of class, I pass out an assignment the first 5 minutes, and someone whispers to their neighbor, okay, what page did he say? And I said, that's it, get out. They're like, oh my God, we can't even whisper in this man's class. Now I had to do that because I am me. And they were going to quickly find out that I'm goofier than they are, that something's wrong with me, and they would run me. So I needed to show them that I had a wrathful side. Does that make sense? Yes. So they were afraid of me the first day. Now, it only took a couple weeks, and they went, okay, we got you. But they never ran me, because they knew I was crazy, and I might just go crazy. Because I had done that thing, right? But they knew they could also play, they knew both sides of me. But I had to do that wrathful thing. I had to show them, I'll kick you out of class. So don't mess with me. But what if God wants to show his wrath? What if God needs to show there are consequences? And if your children don't think there are ever consequences for what they do, they'll do it. They'll do whatever they want, right? If you keep promising, I'm going to spank you and you never do, I'm going to punish you and you never do, why would they listen to you? If I speed down the highway and I never get a ticket, why would I slow down? The policeman keeps letting me off the hook, and you know, then I'm not, oh, why? You understand? It's important to know that there are consequences, because there's certain activities that we do that are going to kill us, and God needs to show he's trying to stop us from hurting ourselves. So he needs to know. That's why you snatch that child's hand if they're not paying attention when we're crossing the street. No, you got to pay attention to me when I say don't cross, because kids don't know that cars won't stop. Kids think we can just, my ball went across the street, I'll just go after it. They have no idea about stuff. And when you say stop, they got to stop. And so sometimes you have to spank them quick or something, do something to let them know, if I say stop, don't you move. There are consequences coming, because you're trying to save their life. And that's what God is trying to do for us. I need to show that there are consequences if you don't listen. So he'll give consequences on little tiny things. I'm always glad when I get judged instantly just for something stupid. Oh man, I shouldn't eat that extra piece of pie. God told me to stop. My son, okay, I don't have to listen to God when God says something. He'll give consequences on little things. So we know on the bigger things when he says don't do that, even when we don't understand why not to do it. Well, something's telling me not to do that, so even though that looks perfectly good, I'm going to not do that, because I've learned to listen to that warning. So God says, I need to show them my wrath. They need to know. But what if, Paul says, what if he endured for a long time? Like, what if he put up for a long time, and then finally, he's bringing his wrath now? Because Paul lived in the time when Israel was about to be totally destroyed. And he's warning them. I know we've been around for a long time. I know you were in bondage for 7 years and God let you out of bondage. But what if you're that clay that God is finally just getting rid of and dispersing throughout the world? What if Jerusalem's not going to exist anymore for 2,000 years? What if God's really about to just end it all? What if that's what's going on? Will you please listen, Paul said. Some of them listened, some of them didn't. And sure enough, about 6 years after Paul wrote the book of Romans, the actual Romans showed up and destroyed Jerusalem, destroyed the temple. And the Jews were dispersed throughout the world for the next 2,000 years. They just now, in 1948, came back to Jerusalem, which is also a sign of the end of the world. But we'll get to that when we get to Jerusalem, when we get to Revelation. So, Paul's explaining, you're that clay that Jeremiah was talking about. You're the clay. So I'm submitting to you now in advance. The toes of iron and clay were actually the Romans. There were 10 emperors who were alive when Jesus was born, from the time that Jesus was born until the temple was destroyed in 70 AD. There was a 70-year period. AD is the first day that Jesus is born, right? Before that is BC, before Christ. So starting from 0 AD to 70 AD, when the temple was destroyed, there are 10 different Roman emperors. There are also, do you have a question?
What is AD?
After death.
Domino is after God.
Oh, no, it's after death. It's AD, not AG.
Yeah, Anno, I'm saying Anno,
Anno
I'm sorry. Anno means the year of God, the year of our Lord. Domino is God, Latin for God. So it's Anno Domino, it's the year that God was born. We say annual, this is done annually and it's yearly. So Anno is this Latin word for yearly.
No, what did I'm sorry, say what it is again?
Anno Domino, which is the year
So,
of God.
AD, okay.
Yeah, AD.
Okay.
So the year of God. So the year that God was born, that's when history starts again. And in 70 AD, now we're going forward. We've been counting backwards until then. 500, 400, 300, 200, we've been counting backwards. Starting at 0 year when Christ was born, we begin counting forward. Yes, sir. Okay, I'm just saying, thank you for that. You know, I should talk to my brother, because that's important to interrupt what I'm saying. So, yes, there's no 0 year. It starts with 1.
Who knew?
I'm just saying, at that point. So, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and until 70 AD, when the temple was destroyed, there were 10 Roman emperors. Next week, I'll give you their names, and there were also Jewish kings who were intermingled with them. There's King Herod, and King Herod Antipas, and King Herod Agrippa. These are the 3 major kings. And we're going to see there's divisions about 3 kings, but that's next week. But anyway, so the Jewish kings, the Romans left the Jewish kings in charge of Jerusalem, and they tried to work together with them. You remember when, but those kings did not worship God. Even though those kings were over the Jews, they worked with the Romans. They did whatever the Romans told them to do. When they brought Jesus in to crucify him, they said, send them to, instead of saying, no, he's our Messiah, they said, no, send them to Pilate. Send them to the Roman emperor. And the Roman emperor said, I don't have anything to do with him, so I'm sending them back to Herod. And they said, no, we have no king but Caesar. We don't worship the Bible king. We don't worship the Messiah. We now worship the Roman God. He is our king. This person is not our king. And those kings actually were oppressing the Jewish people, even though they were Jewish kings. There were Jewish kings that worked with the 10 Roman emperors. Iron and clay. Because the Jewish people, the kings at that time, they were just as oppressive to the work of God as the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Persians, the Romans. Those Jewish kings were so into their power. Don't forget that Herod tried to kill all the babies that were born. Remember? Because he needed to stop the Messiah. He wanted his power. He was a Jewish king. Now, he was one of the Edomites. The Edomites were the children of the brother, Jacob and Esau. Jacob and Esau, right? So Jacob's line, Esau's line. So he was he adopted the Jewish religion and was made king. They brought him in because he was of the line, but he really wasn't of the line because he comes through Jacob. He was Esau. So they were called Edomites. But he was brought in and felt threatened that some Messiah was going to show up, some king was going to show up and take his kingdom from him. So the Jewish kings, they sought to thwart the work of the gospel. So they were just as oppressive as if they were the Babylonians. Does that make? They tried to kill, one of them, the other king killed John the Baptist, and then King Agrippa, he killed the first, who died first? James was the first martyr, and put Peter in prison. They were always trying to stop the gospel. Up until the Romans came in and destroyed the temple in 70 AD, the Jewish kings were actually the worst enemy to the gospel. So that was the Roman iron and the Jewish clay mixed together. There was some intermarriage. One of the king's daughters married one of the emperor's daughters. They thought that didn't work out. There were political marriages between these. They tried to work together. The Jews didn't have any, the Jewish kings didn't have any power. Remember, it says that they were partly strong, partly fragile. They didn't have any real power. Their power all came from Rome. But they still were ruling and oppressing. So in that image, you're smiling.
Something said.
Okay, don't tell me. So, in that image of the gold head Babylonians, the Persians that came next, the Greeks, the Romans, and then those 10 Jewish kings that in power at the same time as those 10 Roman emperors, they're mixed together. These are all people who are trying to thwart and stop the gospel from going forward. And when Jesus shows up, he eventually destroys. Now, the problem is the people think that those 10 toes are today. So they look around today and say, well, who are the 10 kings that are, and they go, oh, that must be the European Union. So if you watch the talk shows, Christian talk shows, they say, yes, we're 10. And 30 years ago, there were 10 nations in the European Union. Now there's like 17 or 20, so they try to stretch it. Well, the original 10, but Jesus was, the Bible's talking about during Jesus' time. He showed up and he destroyed his kingdom, brought down the Roman Empire, brought down the rule of those Jewish kings, and Christianity was established. And that has filled the earth. Christianity, even though the Babylonians had a vision that their kingdom would fill the earth. The Greeks Alexander the Great was trying to fill the earth. Nero and Julius Caesar, they're all trying to fill the earth with their kingdom. The only thing that is all over the face of the earth, you go to China, you go to Iran, where there's a revival going on, you go to all, is God's kingdom has filled the earth. Every corner of the earth, they know about Jesus Christ. So that's what he's trying to say. That kingdom is going to be established forever and will not be destroyed. So that's the image, and we'll get more into it in just a minute. Next week, Daniel chapter 3.
Nebuchadnezzar, the king, made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits, and its width was 6 cubits.
So it's 90 feet high. So Nebuchadnezzar, after he heard the interpretation that his kingdom was the gold but was going to get cut off, he made an image entirely of gold to say, no, my kingdom's going to last forever. So he built a 90-foot high statue, just like the image from his dream, but it was all of gold. Like, you will not take my kingdom away from me. Now we know that Nebuchadnezzar then went crazy.
That part.
Because God's like, you can't, no image is going to stop me. He went crazy, he finally repents. He's out there eating bugs and grass.
In the wilderness.
He's crazy, right? Long fingernails. Look like somebody I saw the other day. But, and then he finally repented and turned his heart back to the Lord. He's got a son who didn't pay any attention to that. In Daniel chapter 5, verse 3, 5, 18, 22, 31.
Then they bought the gold vessels that had been taken from the temple. Then they bought the gold vessels that had been taken from the temple of the house of God, which had been in Jerusalem. And the king and his lords, his wife and his concubines drank from them.
So this is Belshazzar. He had a feast. And when they had gone in and they had, this is the first time they destroyed the Jewish temple, the first time the Babylonians destroyed it, they took the vessels that God had told them to use for worship. And they had them hidden away. Belshazzar said, bring out those all the communion elements and all that. Bring that up. We'll drink wine and we'll have a party with God's stuff, just to show that you're not scared of God. I'm not scared of you. And so he brings it out, and they're drinking from it, having a good time.
Wow.
Then suddenly, there's a finger writing on the wall. Read verse 5.
In the same hour, the fingers of a man's hand appeared and wrote opposite the saw the part of the hand that wrote.
Well, and it wrote, meaning, it wrote something. I didn't put it in because I'm trying to save money at Kinko's. So it wrote on the wall, right? A hand suddenly appeared. Now, a finger, just a finger writing on the wall. Now, clearly they were not African American because they stayed to see what does that finger mean. Now we know if a finger suddenly started floating around this room,
Gone.
we'd be having service in the parking lot. Not even missing a beat. That's like, well, that finger owns that Belgian Hall now, so we have to rename that Belgian Hall the Fingership Hall.
Stay to let you know what happened.
Yes. Oh, please. Keep me here. What is that thing doing here? You have to tell us later. After we prayed for you through holy water. So, O king. Oh, so here's what Daniel says to Belshazzar.
O king, the most high God gave Nebuchadnezzar your father the kingdom and majesty, glory and honor. But when his heart was lifted up and his spirit was hardened in pride, he was opposed from his kingly throne, and they took his joy from him. Then he was driven from the sons of men. His heart was made like the beast, and his dwelling was like wild donkeys. They fed him with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till he knew that the Most High God rules in the kingdom of men, and appoints over it whomever he chooses.
Whoever he chooses. So until he realizes, and God will do that to you, until you realize he's in charge, he's going to keep pressing down on you, on us, right? Until you realize this is not going to work until you do it God's way. It's just not going to work. You're going to keep doing it your way. You can keep running around and do it, and I'm going to keep the pressure on until you say, okay, I give. Then you take it off. That's all God wants is for you to recognize he rules and he puts in power whom he chooses. You can't keep yourself in power. You can't just make a statue to yourself. You make people worship it. God will destroy your statue because you make sure that he gets the glory. Go ahead with you, verse 22,
But you, his son, Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, although you knew all this.
So you knew that. You saw what God did to your father, and you thought, well, that's not going to happen to me. I don't know why we think that. Well, I know what happened to you, but that's not going to happen to me. I'll just be slicker. I'll be more clever than they were. As opposed to, let me do a whole different thing than they did. Let me do the same thing they did. I know how they messed up. So I'll just get around. I'll do it my way.
Right, I'm going to do it this way.
So he said, God's going to take the kingdom from you. Go into verse 30.
That very night, Belshazzar, king of the Chaldeans, was slain, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years old.
So it's already started. The Medians and the Persians are already starting to take over. That very night, when he thought he's celebrating and drinking wine and having good, you can't stop what God has ordained to happen. So God already told them what was going to happen, and they thought they can delay it. So again, when we get to the book of Revelation, which will be there in a couple of weeks, we need to understand all of these visions. Because when John wrote the book of Revelations, he's referring back to this. There's a lot of beasts and a lot of things in the book of Revelations. This is what they're talking about. So if we understand who these people are, the book of Revelations is actually easy to understand. But if we try to interpret it based on what's happening today, we're going to misinterpret it. So the 10 toes were the 10 Roman emperors who lived from 0 AD, no, from 1 AD to 70 AD. And the 10 toes of clay were the Jewish kings who served right alongside of them. But then when Jesus came, he gave them a period of time to repent. They did not. And Jerusalem was destroyed, and the temple was destroyed, and his kingdom was established, his everlasting kingdom. And when we read in the book of Revelations, he gives another warning, using those same images, about maybe today, we'll see, possibly our time, or it could be 100 years from now, but he's giving the same warning. That same spirit of Antichrist, that same spirit that came over the Babylonians, there's going to be someone who's going to rise up in your day, an Alexander the Great, a Nebuchadnezzar, who will fool you and try to talk about world peace. And it'll be the same spirit. So we've got to recognize what that spirit was so that we are not fooled. Because the Bible says a lot of Christians are going to be fooled and they're going to follow after him. Because they're going to get too caught up in politics. I just want to say this is the truth. Christians are separate from politics. It's okay for there to be politics. Jesus says, render to Caesar. He didn't say, I'm destroying Caesar. He said, render to Caesar what's Caesar's, but render to me what's mine. And there are going to be too many Christians who are going to get caught up in the political world. And they're going to believe everything that's going on in the political world. And Jesus' kingdom is separate. Daniel said, no, I'm not going to get caught up in politics. I'm going to live separately. And part of the allure is going to be the Christians who are going to be excited with their political power. And when someone comes along and says, hey, let's do that, they'll go, yes, I will compromise with you because together we're going to accomplish God's work. And they're going to compromise. Good, well-intentioned. But that's going to be the problem because he wants us to be separate. He doesn't want Christians to establish a political party or any kind of party. He wants Christians to always be standing for Jesus, period, and not ever compromise. Daniel could just compromise. All he had to do was bow to the east and pray. He could have prayed silently to Jesus. They just said to Daniel, just bow to the east 3 times. It's like, no, that'll make it look like I'm on your side. And the Antichrist is going to be able to come to Christians and say, just bend this little bit. Because then we'll be able to accomplish the same thing. You know you want this. If you just take this little part, and then look what you're going to be able to do. And Christians say yes, because that political power is so important. Because we're going to have more faith in political power than in God power. If we stay out of politics and just present Jesus to people, we're not going to have enough faith that that will change the world. So we're going to think, no, I need to be this and be that. And it's going to be that compromise that we'll see. That same political, because again, the Babylonians are establishing a political empire. The Greeks came in, the Romans, and that same compromise, those Jewish kings had to compromise with Rome. And eventually, when Jesus showed up, they stopped him. They didn't realize they were stopping the Messiah. They didn't know it was the Messiah, but they had just given up so much in order to keep their power that they were no longer able to recognize Jesus. And that's what's going to happen, according to many Christians. When Jesus shows up, they won't recognize Jesus because they would have given up so much and compromised so much with the world to have political power. They're not going to recognize Jesus also. But that won't be us, because we're going to study and know what to do. And not just us in the school, but there are many Christians who are studying the Word to make sure that they know. Because unfortunately, another beast is coming, another Antichrist is coming. It might be in our lifetime. It could be 100 years from now. But we certainly are living in the time. He said one of the signs when we see Israel become a nation again. And so we know we're in the last part. But he never says 30 years later or 80 years later, you know. But we know that one of the major signs has happened. Yeah. Okay, so if there aren't any questions, I thank you so much for coming out. I believe you came here accidentally. You're stuck here listening to me. But if you keep coming, hopefully you'll learn a lot. Let's bow our heads. Father, we just thank you so much. You're so good. We thank